in the public cloud, you get a bill every month for what gets used. So it's hard for companies to understand before they make a decision, what is this actually going to cost us if it goes into the cloud? Because there's a lot of unknowns like egress and data transfer and the size of machine and scaling and all these other things that happen in the real world. And then you get billed for it later on. So I noticed how many customers really didn't have any software they were using for this. Like a lot of really big customers we were talking to were trying to analyze these really complex, very expensive and very risky decisions using spreadsheets and stuff. So it was over time where I just realized there's a really big opportunity to create a software that makes the financial management of the public cloud much easier and much clearer to work with.
Welcome to Alexa's Input, the podcast where we decode the minds behind the tech shaping our world. Today we have Matt Biringer, a tech sales veteran who took a leap of faith, leaving a successful career to start North Cloud, an AI-powered platform that's already saved clients millions in cloud cost. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Alexa. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you had a good career. You were a top performer. Most people would just kind of stay with that, continue on that success. Can you take us back to the moment you decided to walk away from it all? And was it a single event or was it a slow burn that was building that led to you starting a new company?
Well, it's a very good question. So I spent like 12 or 13 years in cloud and data center sales. So really anything that's ever sat in a data center, server, storage, switching, buffer licensing, all that stuff I've sold at some point in my career. And it was a great run. I enjoyed it very much. I always had it in my mind that at some point, like I wanted to work for myself. And the right time came and I felt like it was time to kind of take a leap and bet on myself a little bit. And that's what I did. I mean, there wasn't a single point that it wasn't very, very scary. And there also wasn't a single point where I felt like it was like the safe play or anything. For me, I was at Pure, who's like an awesome public company. They do like all flash data storage. And I was there for 5-ish years. I think it was about 5 when I left. And towards the end of my run, I really felt like I needed a different challenge. And the idea of like taking another sales job at, another big vendor or something like that just felt like it wasn't really like that exciting. So there was a time where like the lack of excitement for something new in the sales world was outweighing like in my mind the potential risk of like trying something and failing. And I just thought I'd rather just give something a shot. And if I fail, I fail, but at least I tried and at least I can, live with the fact that I've tried and worked really hard at something, and not everything's always going to work all the time. You're going to fail at stuff in life anyway. So it just felt like it was about 2023. It felt like the right time. It felt like for our category and our company, like we work mostly on public cloud optimization and automation. This was like the very early days of ChatGPT and the AI boom. And it just felt like there was big shifts coming to a lot of software industries, cloud optimization included. So it just felt like this was just a great time to do it. And I'm glad I did, obviously.
Yeah. So how did you stumble on the idea? How did you decide that this is what you were going to build something on?
Well, I always wanted to do cloud next. So I did a lot of data center work in the early years of my career, which was obviously great. The world has obviously changed a lot since 2020. Since 2012, 2013, 2014, which was like the early years of my career. So I always knew that the next thing for me, I wanted to be in the public cloud or working on, more exciting stuff than just building servers and storage in a data center. So I also knew just from my work at Pure how many customers that were working with Pure that were trying to make multi-cloud or decisions as far as like, hey, we have all this infrastructure, we have all this data. Where should this sit? Like, should it sit in a Pure storage system in a data center? Should it sit in Pure's hybrid cloud offering? Should it sit in AWS? Should it sit in GCP? And the more I worked with those customers to try and analyze those decisions, the more I realized like how difficult it was for customers to understand the cost and benefit and ROI value of the financial system of the public cloud. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Number one, it's obviously retroactive billing versus if you're building a data center, it's really proactive billing. You're going to pay for all this stuff and then amortize it over a period of time. In the public cloud, it's the opposite, right? You're going to basically put a bunch of stuff up there. You get a bill every month for what gets metered and what gets used, and then you're kind of off and running. So it's hard for companies to like understand, like before they make a decision, what is this actually going to cost us if it goes into the cloud? Because there's a lot of unknowns like egress and data transfer and the size of machines and scaling and all these other things that happen in the real world, and then you get billed for it later on. So I just kind of noticed like how many customers really didn't have any sort of software they were using for this. Like a lot of really big customers we're talking to, we're trying to analyze these really complex, very expensive and very risky decisions using spreadsheets and stuff. So it was over time where I just kind of realized like, hey, there's a really big opportunity to create a software that makes like the financial management of the public cloud much easier and much clearer to work with. And that happened over probably the year before I left Pure. I started kind of like getting my head at least like working on the concept for this and starting to think about it. And I actually gave my notice at Pure 6 months before I actually left, and they convinced me to stay for a bit, which was fine. It was great. I'm happy I did. But it was kind of a long journey to the point of me being like, okay, like I need to detach from this company and work on this like idea I have full time, and then kind of be off and running.
Yeah. And who did you see was getting the worst deal from these cloud providers? Would you say it was smaller vendors, medium or big size, or was it similar all around?
I think it was like, I think that's the other thing that was kind of exciting, and it's been very exciting for us building North, is that traditionally, if you're not even really just talking about data center versus cloud, just like kind of any sort of purchase of any sort of tech, right? The bigger the company you are, the more leverage you have. That's not necessarily the case in the cloud. There's a lot of reasons for that, right? So we actually saw that it was kind of exciting looking at the enterprise space, because the initial companies that were in our space before we built, a lot of them were very startup and SMB focused, which I would understand like the reasoning behind that. And I think in the very early days, we were thinking we would be startup and SMB focused. But the more that we started to understand the space and meet with people and started to work on the problem, the more we realized that it's actually the enterprises in this space that are getting kind of the worst deal. And there's nothing nefarious. It's just the pain points of managing cloud financial operations are much, much more difficult the bigger you get. So like a really good example is like, we have companies who start to use our product, and they might be like a 5 or 10 person startup, and they're like, they're not really spending a lot on the cloud yet. They're spending $5 or $7 or $8,000 or whatever per month in AWS or GCP, or whatever the cloud provider is. And if I save that company with our platform 10 or 20 or 30%, they really can't do much with it, right? Like you can't hire another developer for $1,500 a month or $2,000 a month, right? So like the success criteria might be the same in both categories, but the impact is totally different. So if we work with a company that's spending $3 million a month in AWS and we save them 15%, that's a lot of money. That's $450,000 of brand new operating cash per month that they can go and hire more people, turn on more machines, reinvest in new projects that they've been waiting on. If they're a business that does a lot of marketing, advertising, then that money can go into advertising and getting more customers, getting bigger. So like the impact was just so much bigger in bigger accounts that we found. So we started thinking about the product very different early, and we started thinking about like, okay, we have this like kind of we have this kind of like fork in the road. We can build something that's like kind of simplistic for startups and SMBs and just focus on scaling it to thousands of companies as fast as we can, or we could build something that's a little bit more intelligent, maybe a little bit more complex to build. And maybe it's a little bit more sales-led growth than product-led growth, but it's much more built for like enterprise and large companies. We chose the latter, obviously, which has been I think a good bet for our type of company. But yeah, I would say that was another misconception, is like a lot of people assume like, all right, well, the big companies must have it figured out. It's like they a lot of times don't. And a lot of times like, the penalty for them mismanaging this, even small percentages, is a lot of money for, if you're $5-10 million a month in the cloud and you're mismanaging it by 5 or 10%, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, that is a lot of money. You mentioned that you were in sales for 12 years. So how did 12 years of tech sales prepare you for this role as CEO? What do you think is, the one sales skill that's been surprisingly critical to help you to run a company?
I don't know if there's like one specific thing. I think to be a good and I would be a terrible CEO, like a big company. So the one thing I've learned is like the startup CEO skill set you need and like the big company CEO, it's like two wildly very, very different worlds. So I have like friends of mine who are like riding the corporate ladder at like big companies. They're like, I want to be CEO one day. And I'm like, you are so good at like managing the complex beast of this 20,000 person company or 30,000 person company. I would never know what to do with a company that big.
It's a lot of politics maneuvering that way.
It's a lot of people, a lot of management, a lot of policies.
Yeah.
You probably make less decisions, but more highly impactful decisions. So you probably have to be more like kind of thoughtful about what you do in those types of companies. Where in a startup, like you make a decision, it doesn't work, you pivot really quickly. It's not really like a big thing. So I think like the skills that I took from sales that I think probably most people from sales can take is like, number one is like essentially revenue solves all problems. So in the first year or two of North, like I was really, really focused on obviously like hiring and getting the product to work and like working with, but like my big focuses were like get customers using the platform, paying for the platform, and get investors excited about that progress. And those two things feed off of each other really nicely. But essentially like revenue fixes everything. So like if you're just very sales focused and very get the product out, get people buying it, not people using it for free, that's fine too, but like get real revenue and real numbers that you can put into slides to show investors and get excited and get people excited about the progress that you're making month over month. I think that's like one of the most crucial things you can do as an early stage, startup founder. And I think the second thing is really just emotional intelligence. Like in sales, you learn many different types of personalities. You learn to very quickly understand how do people analyze decisions, how do people make decisions, how do people want to get talked to, you can pick up things very quickly talking to people that maybe somebody who's not in sales, who doesn't talk to people for a living, maybe they don't pick it up right away. If you're selling to a big company, you can kind of feel out the politics very quickly, feel out how people are motivated and how they think and all that. So there's a lot of like soft skills that you can take to being a founder that I think translate really, really nicely from sales.
Yeah, I like that. So you're saying that more money, less problems here.
Yeah, kind of, but also like it's kind of weird. Yes, more money, less problems. So in an way, it's like more money, more problems. So
yeah.
Like it's weird. Like it's startups are like vacuums. So like, actually, it's probably not the best way to put it, but like the best way to put it is probably like startups like sharks. Like they have to always be swimming and always be moving. Yes, like it feels great to like close deals, and like we've had many, many good quarters in a row and our growth is great, but it's like every time we have an amazing quarter, we like have to stop and look around and be like, how the fuck are we going to do that again? Like, where's the pipeline? Like we got to go sell more. Like,
yeah.
Let's say you have a startup that's 1 or 2 million of ARR. To get that startup to grow, 200% per year is very challenging. To get a $5-10 million ARR company to grow 100 or 200% is a whole different game. So there's like these levels you get to in startup land. There's like maybe early levels of like, we got to get a product out, get some users, get people paying for it. And then we get our first kind of investment checks and we can start to like be a little more strategic about our spend. And then there's like, all right, we've gotten to 1 or 2 million, and then we've gotten to 5 or 10. And it's like, every time you go up these levels, it's, there's freedom of like, okay, we have lots of revenue. We could pay for our operating expenses. We're less stressed about operating cash or whatever. But there's also like the reality of like, if we have bad quarters and our growth kind of goes from here to kind of plateauing, like that hurts our future, freedom of movement. It hurts our ability to raise more money or hire more or keep scaling or whatever, right? So it's kind of both. Like there definitely is more money, less problems, but there's also like the more you grow, the more that you have to keep growing. So it's kind
of more
of
pressure, the more expectation, especially if you're investors and stuff. Yeah, that makes sense.
And like we have great investors. Like we don't like none of our investors are high pressure. I don't like working with people like that at all. So I try and filter them out, but none of our investors are like high pressure. Like the pressure really comes from like me and internal, like the way we think about it. So like if you're a founder, like you'll feel more pressure like from you should really from yourself than from anybody else. Like my standards of like how the company should grow and flow over the next like couple years is probably like way higher than anyone else's standards. Like sometimes I'll send an investment update. Like we just did our Q2 investor update, which I thought our Q2 was like pretty good, better quarters, but it was good. It wasn't like a bad quarter, like by any, but it wasn't like we've had some quarters where I'm like, I cannot wait to fucking fire this investor update out. This was like a fucking amazing quarter. Last quarter was like pretty good. We made a lot of progress on a lot of things and good. But like, so in my head, I was like, I just wish we maybe did a little bit more. And there was a couple deals we left on the table that we couldn't close or whatever. And I like fired out. All my investors were like, holy shit, amazing. They're just like going crazy. And I was like, I know it was good, but it wasn't that good. It was good. So like the pressure you hold yourself as a founder, I think is always going to be higher than like what other people hold you to ideally.
Yeah. I mean, I would guess that you've probably been like this in every role, though, not just a founder. Like you probably did it with yourself, maybe in school or maybe, at your job as well. I don't know. I was always more upset with myself if I made a B than my mom was, for example. It might also be a characteristic.
I was a terrible student, so I can't, but in business world, yeah, I agree. You always have a really high standard of yourself.
Yeah.
But you got to learn not to like drive yourself crazy too. At the same time, and realize like, all right, well, we're making a lot of really good progress. And, it's a weird balance, especially like as a founder, because you're like, you just kind of go in these circles where you're like, we need to be doing more. And then like you do more and then it's not enough. Like we need to be, or like we're already at like we forecasted like a goal to our investors of like, hey, we want to hit this revenue clip by the end of the year. And like, we're already there in August. And in my head, I'm like, it doesn't even feel like we're having a good year, even though we're already at our goal and we're above it. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, we got to keep, like, we can get to the next goal that we didn't even think we could do it. So it's like, you could drive yourself a little crazy with it. So you got to be kind of careful, but you also want to, press the gas as much as you can.
Yeah. Balance in life is important. Like, being able to look at small steps along the journey and be appreciative and, have gratitude for that is good. But I also get it. Having that mindset of wanting to achieve in a way is also very helpful. I also see that you do jujitsu. My uncle also does that. And he finds it a way to, kind of balance himself a bit. I'm curious if you also think there are principles from this that have helped you to build a startup and from this practice and the discipline it takes.
Yeah, I think that I'm obviously impartial to jiu-jitsu because it's like the martial art that I practice. I'm not like a crazy person with it, but I do go once or twice a week. I would say that there's a lot of like really important life principles that you understand much deeper from jiu-jitsu than you will learn pretty much anywhere else. And there's also like a serious mental health benefit of jiu-jitsu. Most people that your uncle probably will talk about this a ton the next time you see him, if you ever want to pick his brain on it. But like most people will talk about how like jiu-jitsu is one of those things that you do, and it's almost it's obviously very healing mentally, but I'll give you a great example. Like, so anybody who's never been in jiu-jitsu, it's like, it's essentially submission grappling on the ground. And it's very, very technical and there's a lot to think and analyze. It's kind of like chess, but like with human bodies. If you lose in the chess game, somebody chokes you, which just doesn't feel great, obviously. So one of the really cool things about jiu-jitsu is because like there's so much to analyze and there's so much at stake when you're on the, and sparring with a partner, that period of time is probably the only period of time where your mind actually shuts off all the outside noise. It does it on purpose because in your brain, your human brain is saying like, you're in danger. You need to focus all your mental energy on this thing. This is something that just naturally happens. You don't have to do it. Like you'll just experience it. you'll go through your first few jujitsu lessons, and then like you'll walk out of, after the lesson, be like, oh wow, like I haven't thought about, like, I don't know, what's my first name? Like I haven't thought about anything in life outside of like what was going on the mat for that 45 minutes. Like it's like a total refresher mentally. So there's a lot of mental health benefits to it, but you learn a lot of principles in jiu-jitsu that you could apply to anything. Strategy, obviously you learn a lot of that. You learn that like making really difficult decisions is not really all that difficult, and that sometimes in your head you overcomplicate things and you really shouldn't. A lot of that you learn from jiu-jitsu. And it's one of those things where like if you're doing jiu-jitsu and you're getting the shit beat out of you and there's like somebody on top of you that's 240 pounds and trying to choke you and you're trying to hold them off, it's like, and you're like pinned and you can't move and you're trying to figure out like what are the 2 or 3 things I need to do to get out of the situation. Like planning that out under that much stress is like considerably harder than being like, I don't know, who should we hire for this position, or what should we say to this customer's question? Like all of a sudden, like the stuff that was like really, really stressful, you're like, this isn't that stressful. Like, let's just sit down and figure it out. Like, we'll figure it out. We'll do the right thing. And if we fuck up, we'll fix it. It's like all of a sudden, like your mind resets. Like it becomes easier to make decisions and think clearly, I think.
Wow.
That's just what I take from it, but everybody's a little bit different. It's cool though. If you've never done it, I would suggest doing it at least once just so you can experience it. But
Yeah, I mean, I like the way you put that. I guess it's really helpful, especially for individuals under high stress, so that need to make decisions in high stress. It seems like a great way to clear your mind and a little meditative too.
it's super meditative. It sounds like more intense than it really is.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. It's like one of those things that people assume that like everyone's like, gnarly and like, like it's not really at all. Like people are like 99% of the people you meet like in the jiu-jitsu world are like the sweetest, nicest, most gentle people you ever meet in your life. Like somebody will choke you and be like, "You all right? Is that okay?" You're like, "Yeah." You're like, okay, I want to make sure, it's like people are like very, very sweet, very, it's a very accepting and open community, which is cool.
They're not like, take that.
No, not at all. Yeah. You also learn, I think that this has nothing to do with business, but like you also learn, like, especially as a guy, like so many guys, like myself included when I was younger, like walk around with this like totally incorrect like perception that like they can like win fights or whatever. It's like you just like is so much.
I know, was you a little.
You're a young man, you have so much ego.
Yeah.
Then you realize like you do jiu-jitsu, you realize like you're not going to win many fights. Number one. And number two, like it's pretty terrible to be in a fight. Like it's very, very terrible to have a human, like humans are heavier than you think they are. So it's like, you're like, I just don't want to I don't want to get into it with anybody. Even like now when I walk around like the world, if, I don't know, somebody's like says something I don't like or cuts me off like in traffic, I'm like, whatever, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Move on with my life. It's just easier and more relaxing to do that than to get stressed or get upset at somebody,
Yeah, less stress, healthy life, and similar outcome, like still living your life, making decisions. So great. I love that. Actually, I'm wearing the North Cloud shirt, by the way.
Nice. How did we not talk about that already?
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I know. I almost forgot that because it cut it off that I was wearing it.
I'm
but
very happy at that party. Everyone took the shirts, by the way.
By the way, they're great shirts.
Great, right? Very comfy.
I've had some merch that's not as comfy. This is a great shirt. And by the way, I have a no merch shirt rule usually, but I felt this and I was like, okay, this one's a good one.
Nice. Yeah. We like invest a lot in like good quality swag and we love it.
And you have great hats. The corduroy hats.
Yeah.
Great.
Hat is awesome. We have this quarter zip like fleece thing that I live in all winter long. I have like my house. I'll send you one of those. We have awesome merch. I'm glad you're wearing it and enjoying it.
Yeah, I love the merch. But let's dig into what North Cloud actually is. So tell me more about it, what it does, everything.
Yeah, so it's basically like an AI operating system for your cloud finances. So in the public cloud, there's everyone wants to optimize, which basically means spend less or be more lean and efficient. The vast majority of like ways that you optimize is very heavy on human analysis and engineering actions. And we wanted to build an operating system that took the human analysis away from the user as much as possible, not in a bad way, but really like trying to relieve the user from a lot of manual work to get to the insight that they're looking for. So North is a pretty intelligent platform. It takes 5 minutes to set up. Anybody can set it up that has a cloud account, but it'll basically take a bunch of data, analyze what's going on, and start to, if you wanted to, it'll start to optimize your cloud totally in the background. And there's basically a few layers of cloud optimization. There's rate optimization, which basically means like licensing commitments, and there's usage optimization, which is like, hey, if I have 100 servers that are turned on and 20 of them are running at 0 or 1% CPU utilization, like we probably should shut those off or at least downsize them or something. But everything there is like I said, very, very human driven, very, people are managing a lot of this today with spreadsheets. A lot of companies that we work with are like, hey, I used to have like a weekly call with engineering and product and finance so we can all make these decisions and analyze all this data that we're pulling from our cloud accounts and doing equal sum a million times in Excel to figure out how to make this better. And we just turned on North and like, we're saving more money than we've ever saved. And we're also not spending any time managing all this. So it's really, you're at Bloomberg. So it's like the way I would like localize it is like kind of like a Bloomberg terminal for your cloud costs, really. It's like an added software. It plugs right into your existing cloud. It doesn't require any tech work, and it will begin to, automate and optimize your cloud in the background for you.
So why is it that cloud platforms don't offer some way for people to do this? Or is there a reason why it's so hard?
Yeah, we could probably spend an hour and a half on that question. So I would say that there's a few layers to that answer. The first is kind of obvious that like, I don't know if cloud providers are necessarily incentivized to help customers optimize things to the most dramatic degree, because they're going to pay the customer's top line spend. So there is some native optimization kind of data tooling that most providers will provide. It still requires an engineer to take that data, pull a lot of data reports, analyze it, and then create like a plan of action that fits their environment. So these tools are not very personalized to the customer's environment, whereas North is super, super intelligent. So it'll tell you, like, you plug it in and it basically will start to automate the actions needed to reduce the spend, but also it knows all the common ways that a customer would reduce spend, usage optimization, alerting for anomalies, and flagging those to make sure people investigate them, make sure there's not an issue, rate commitment optimization, all these things. So, the first answer to the question is that I think the existing like cloud native tools are very, very rudimentary, and very, very like, hey, here's a bunch of data. We don't know your environment. Go take a bunch of data, analyze it, and you do whatever you want to do. Whereas North, it's like, we actually don't want to spend any time on this. We want a platform that's going to automate all the actions and will take the data and analyze it for us and then create a really nice dashboard that shows what's going on in a simple way. Also shows what actions are pending and happening in the background. So I think it's a combination of things, but the biggest thing I would compare it to is like, ChatGPT versus Google search, right? So like, if you're like, oh, ChatGPT is really cool, like, can I find this data on Google? Like you can, it's just going to take you longer and a lot to do. You're going to have to Google the question, pull a bunch of data, analyze it, organize your thoughts. And then, you can come up with what ChatGPT is giving you, or you just use ChatGPT and it'll do all that in the background for you.
I love that analogy. And you touched a little bit on this, but can you speak more on the data signals that your AI is analyzing to make these actions or forecasts and how that translates to savings? And how do you do that in a safe way?
Yeah. So what the app is going to look at when you plug into it is it's going to take a variety of different reports from the cloud provider. All these cloud providers, like the big golden report that you need to access is something called, in AWS, they call it the CUR file, but it stands for cost and usage report. So all these cloud providers have this like log format report that they compile that actually powers their billing technology. Think of it as like every second that you're using a machine, it pings a log into this file and says, users using this machine, this is what type of machine it is, this is the price per hour, the quantity of minutes or seconds that has been used since the last time we've updated the file or whatever. And these files end up being like millions and millions of lines long, and a lot of times hundreds of millions of lines long, and there's hundreds of columns. So it's a really complex data file. There's really nothing that is non-benign in that data file. It's really like spending and product information and quantities and discounts and percentages, and it's descriptions. And so there's that file is like the main file that we will take in order to start powering machine learning. So our platform will take about a year's worth of data from that file, and it takes some other reports on top of that too. But that's the key thing that it'll take. And what it's basically looking to understand is like, what products is the user using or the company, right? How often do those products go up and down in usage? Do they have busy seasons where they're using more compute? Do they turn off their servers on the weekends? What is the price and break-even points of all their commitment decisions they can make, right? A good example is like, if you could do a 3-year commitment for a server to get 50% off the server, but you have to pay for the commitment all 365 days of the year, does it make cost sense to do that if you plan on turning your servers off on the weekends? So we'll do all this, and this is like something that normally somebody would open a spreadsheet once again and be like, okay, what is our cost per on-demand hour times how many hours a week are we going to run it, and then compare that versus the commitment option, right? So like, once again, it'll do all of this in the background for the user. How we keep it safe is there's a lot to that, but the biggest thing that we do is we try and limit the type of data that we take. So we don't want to take any mission critical data. The most mission critical thing that we have that's not critical at all, but like, we can see what a user names a server, which is not really like, that's still technically kind of benign data. Like, I can't really do anything nefarious with that for the most part. We don't take any data. Like, if somebody has a database, we don't see any of the data in the database. Like, we're very, 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 very limited on what data that we take. And we spend a lot of time on 2 layers, like limiting the data that we take. And then the second layer is in the actual app, we will have certain air gaps in the back end of the app or in the front end of the app. And basically what I mean by that is like, we want to create systems that will plan for the failure of North security, right? So like, if somebody, if a bad actor gets access to North's app, we will plan out like, what is the worst thing that bad actor can do if they have access to North's app, whether it's looking at certain data from customers or it's being able to press buttons in the North app that will do something in our customer's environment. We will map all of that out, and we will be like, okay, they would be able to do this. We need to have an air gap here. Meaning like, if somebody has access to the system, they could put a request in to do something else over here, but they would need to get access to that system too in order to complete that. It's not fully like end-to-end automated. There's an air gap, right? So we try and be really, really thoughtful about that. And then the other thing that there's a lot more behind that, but one of the other things that we do all the time is we hire like outside firms to hack us basically and show us
that's great.
security vulnerability. We do that stuff all the time. Probably 2 to 3 times a year, we'll hire a firm just to try and hack our systems, just to see like what they can do and what the vulnerabilities are, and some of the stuff we know about. That's not really a vulnerability at all. They'll be like, oh, I was able to see this. Like, yeah, but that's the benign data. You can't do anything with that or whatever. So we do a lot there to secure it. It's always a constantly evolving thing though.
You mentioned that you learn from these logs, hey, we're not doing as much over the weekend, for example. I'm sure that takes time. Is that something before you make decisions or do actions about resources? Is there a period of time that you learn their patterns, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's a really good question. The app will take a year's worth of data about the environment when it connects, and then it'll learn right away. So that's another big benefit to the platform is like, if you were to hire us, if you were a consulting company that was like, hey, I want to work with companies to help them optimize, you would have to do kind of what you're describing, right? You would have to start looking at their spend and their data, and then you would have to have a certain amount of time where you're looking at things before you suggest any changes or start to make any actions. Whereas with the North system, we don't really need that period of time. It could be much more immediate because of the fact that we take 12 months of historical data. So I always like to tell customers like, and we're upfront about this type of thing, but it's not to be like mean or anything, but like, you'll spend 5 minutes connecting to our app, and in some ways our app will know your environment better than you do because it's looking at so much data. And it's, I just think like any of these industries where you're dealing with a lot of complex data and a lot of difficult data labeling and all that stuff, like the more complex the data gets and the more data driven decisions and business decisions get, the more appropriate that it's, or the more well placed like an AI system is going to be, right? And you've seen that in like tons of environments. Like that's been in quant trading for 10 years, right? Like these quant hedge funds have been just like building auto trading AI bots for like forever now, because it's just easier and faster. You can just take the data, train a model for like what you want it to do for a certain service, and it's going to be accurate a really, really high percentage of the time.
Yeah.
And it's not going to need a lot of time to make that decision. It's going to be very immediate. So we think we think of North as like a system like that for cloud finance.
Yeah, that's great. As you mentioned before, also, one of your key selling points is that it requires no engineering work from your client's end, which seems maybe almost too good to be true. So how did you crack that code? Why is it so, or how is it so easy to, get on and adopt these people?
Well, we put a lot of time into developing.
Yeah.
This is the short answer.
And
like,
also you mentioned how the user experience is important to you. And I saw it in the way that the site looks. That's very apparent. And I agree that's important. I guess this probably plays into it.
Yeah, like we want to ask our users to do as little as possible. Like that's the whole concept. And that's everywhere. And we've put a lot of time into improving our website, and people like, it's kind of funny that people will mention, like, it's one of the earliest comments we'll get from people is like, your UI is great. Your website is really nice and slick. Like that was not the case a year or a year and a half ago. Like our website was a dumpster fire for a long time. And, so there's a lot of like things you learn early on in startup land where, you might launch and 6 months in, you might be like, wow, like we're just not getting amount of traction. It's like, I don't know, like how simple is your website? Is it like how simple is your copy? Is it easy to understand what your platform does? Are you being transparent about like one of the big improvements we've seen? And this is, I think this is actually a trend that we'll see in software as a service and AI in the coming years is like, we made a really big bet on our new website on being super, super transparent on what the app does. And what services are on the app, what buttons are on the app. So like even to the point where like there's demos of each page in our app on the website. And we did that so that it would be relaxing to do business with us. And what we mean by that is like, if you're a user and you're like, this company's interesting, I don't want that user to begin their journey with North by going on our website and then being like, I don't know, I see this graphic, like I can't tell exactly what it means. It might be very odd. Like this is what it means. This is what the app does. And if this is something that can help you, like let's chat or just try our app, like go on app.north.cloud and play with it. Versus like the other way to do it, which is much more popular nowadays, is like you're not supposed to put a lot of your IP. What happens if people copy it? What happens if other companies look at what you're doing? It's like, we don't care about that. Like we want to be more customer focused than competition focused, which I know is like a cliche, but it really is like how we think, or at least how I think is like, we're just going to go out and compete or competition. So they want to try and catch up what we've already published. That's great. We're already working on the next batch of really cool stuff for our customers. So we're going to keep investing in that and keep growing that way. And if we have people who want to try and copy us, all the merrier. That's cool. We're going to be more focused on customers than anybody else. And I think we'll win because of that. Yeah, that was just a lot of app work. I think there's a lot of tech to write and a lot of automation of like really what you're building is like a 5-minute setup process where we're taking a year worth of data, analyzing it, and then contextualizing all that in a dashboard, and then also building automation behind the scenes to do changes and stuff. Like there's just a wild amount of tech work that needs to get done at work. So I think that part of that has been a journey. It hasn't always been zero user tech work. In the early days, it was you can make a login, and then we need you to do a couple quick things in the back end. We need a half-hour call, and now it's totally end-to-end all right. It's like any startup goes through that journey where it's like the duck is above water, and it's like, wow, it's smooth, and then below water it's going like this, and over time there's less craziness under the water, and it is more smooth. So I think we're more so we're less of that crazy duck under the water now than we used to be.
I do think focusing on that is a really good move, because I think where a lot of people are exhausted with new things, whether it be an app or a new product, is the startup time and what it takes to like log on and get in and get moving. So I think that was a good thing to optimize on. Also, you reminded me when you said you don't mind if people copy you of something my friend told me once. I think it was, you can take the ingredients, but you can't take the sauce.
Yeah.
So it's like they can try to copy you, but it's not always the same. So
yeah, it's this also just inevitable in business. Like that's like, you're going to be in competitive markets. I always told investors, like when we were first coming up and people were like, well, it's cloud optimization, there's many companies. And I'm like, that's true. Like it is competitive. It also shows that there's a big market for this stuff. There's a big market for software solutions that will help people handle this better than how they're doing it themselves. Versus I think it's actually overrated to be the building in a category where nothing else exists. If you're like, I'm building this new thing, nobody's done it yet. The chance of you thinking of something nobody else has thought of is being. So like maybe you did, or maybe like this is an industry that it's really, really hard to build what you're going to build.
Yeah.
And many, many companies have tried and failed, and like, you can try, but or maybe the market is like, this is cool, but I'm not paying for it, which is hyper common. There's so many companies that see where people build really interesting products that do really cool stuff, but they can't get somebody to pay enough money to make that business model work, whereas cloud, totally different.
Yeah, totally. And from what I understand, your business model is a savings-free structure. So you only are going to make money when your clients save money. Why did you choose this model over something more like a traditional SaaS subscription? And how has it changed the dynamic of your relationship with your customers?
I think that we wanted to have skin in the game was the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And that we wanted to have like the ability to, like, there's really two pricing models in cloud optimization. If you're looking at all the software companies in our category, including us, there's like a flat fee model that most commonly gets used by companies who are like, don't do a lot of the automation or don't do a lot of the software licensing, but they'll do just dashboarding and data. Those types of companies are fine, but part of our business is the licensing automation. And on the back end, there's a risk component to that for our business, right? Because we're basically acting as like holding party for licenses and then brokering them. It's a great business. There is a risk component to that. So we thought that there was an opportunity to go up market, solve the very clear licensing automation problem that market companies face with commitment licensing, because that's where most of your optimization is going to come from. And that said, like, I thought there was a huge opportunity for us to go into that market, have a lot of skin in the game, but also have, like, it's very fair for me to say to a customer that's going to save $1 million a month, like, you should pay us a percentage of the savings because we're handling the risk to unlock those savings for you guys. And we haven't had much pushback on that. Like, most of our customers don't push back on pricing at all. I think where we've actually seen pricing pushback is like, if we have a small company and they don't want to pay, like right now we have a dual tier. So we have like a very, very tiny flat fee just to use the software. It's dramatically lower than any of our competitors, but the most of our revenue comes from the savings fee. So it still feels like it's all savings. The reason we did that is there's certain companies who use the software that don't want us to touch their licensing. And like, there is costs to like house the data and do the analytics. Like, there's tech costs. So I'm like, if I'm not monetizing the licensing, like, I need to charge something, like, in order for it to make sense for me to have you guys use our app for the other data services that our app was. So it felt like the right pricing model for us because, like, first off, you're creating almost no client friction. The client doesn't really have to go get a purchase order approved because the revenue of what we're going to get is only coming out of savings we create. So there's no additional burning costs that the client, that the client has to go
Yeah.
through. Like, so, especially in the enterprise space, that makes it really, really easy because tech leaders are like, the less I talk to finance and all that, the better. I have scrutiny and I got to go to 3-bit, this, that, and the other. And it's like, no, it's just, we'll set it up. There's an SLA you agree to. It's a metering process. And if we save you, $100,000 a month, like we're going to bill you for a percentage of that, but who cares? You're still,
Feels like it's free almost.
yeah, it doesn't, yeah,
Feels like it's free and you're still saving money.
it should feel that way.
Yeah.
And we've had there's competitors in our market that will market their product as free, but use this type of savings model. But I hate that. It should feel like it's free, but you shouldn't say it's free. You should be
Yeah.
like, this is what it's going to cost. There's no such thing as a free product. Like this is what it costs. This is why we feel like we should price this way.
It feels like it's free in that the way if I make a return, I feel like I'm making money. Like, of course I bought it, but it still feels like a plus,
This does the same thing where she'll put it to the house and she'll return it and she gets the $100 back on her card and she's like, oh, we made $100 today. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
We did not.
I'm still spending money, but also I kind of save some. So,
Exactly. Yeah. So
so beyond your cost savings, and you demoed this to me also, you are launching a green ops platform for companies to help offset their carbon footprint. So was this always part of your plan or did this evolve?
Yeah, I always wanted to do it. In cloud DevOps nerd world, there's FinOps, which is essentially cloud cost optimization is really what that means. And although FinOps consultants will yell at me for that, but that's really what it means. And then there's this new thing, which is you can also optimize, but instead of optimizing for costs, you're optimizing for what your carbon footprint is for the cloud systems that you're using. Most people don't realize that most people do realize, but some don't realize that the cloud is not physically opaque, made up land. Like it is physically it's just a data center that really, it's a gigantic data, as you well know, Alexa, it's somebody else's data center. So there's still real carbon footprint, power and water usage, all that. The problem in green ops has always been that there's no data. So the cloud vendors, they don't publish any data on, partially because it's almost impossible to nail the exact number of carbon emissions that you're using. There's a bunch of factors to that. But there's almost no public data on this stuff, right? They don't publish how much power a certain processor family draws. There's many factors to that, like weather and if it's extra hot in the data center and the data center cooling, it's drawing more power, right? So there's just too many unknown factors to say this exact machine is going to use this much power per hour. And because you use this much hour, you can equate that to a certain amount of MTCO2s, which is metric tons of carbon emissions, essentially. So anyway, we had to build it from the ground up. This was actually kind of tough for us to build, but we basically built this massive data warehouse that took every single SKU a customer could use in the cloud. We did a bunch of research, SKU by SKU, service by service. It took months for us to do this. I still think actually in hindsight that we haven't gotten return on investment for building the service, just because a lot of customers don't use it. But some that do are like, wow, this is amazing that you guys have this data. We've never been able to put a dashboard on this data. But yeah, it's something we've always wanted to do. It took a long time to build it. And our system will be able to tell a customer, this is the SKUs you're using in your price, in your Amazon account, the same way you would when you get an invoice. It's this is how many servers you used, how many databases and all this stuff. It'll do the same exact thing, except it'll show you power usage, water usage, and carbon footprint based on those services, what data center it comes from, what country you were using it from. There's certain countries that are hyper efficient in using sustainable energy in their power grids. There's some that are hyper terrible at it, right? So it'll weigh all that based on location and everything else. And it'll give you a pretty good estimate. There is no such thing as a 1000% accurate estimate in this world, but it'll at least give you some data to start making some decisions. And the cool thing for us too is we tie that into instances. So people can go in and say, hey, I'm using this server. It's here's our pricing data, our optimization data, but we also now have sustainability data on how much of our carbon footprint we can claw back by moving this server from an extra large server to a medium server or something like that. Right. So that was always the the plan and the concept is to give the user that data so they can make more informed decisions, not just on price, but on, carbon footprint, which I think is going to be more important.
Do you think that in the future, near future, that the ROI will be larger here, that carbon footprint will have some type of stricter requirements in the future?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's also going to be really, really, really tricky for AI companies. So what most people don't think about when they think about AI is really just GPU computing, which is more, as you know more about this than I do, but essentially it's just GPUs, and GPUs are hyper non-power efficient. They use a ton of power. They're hard to get. They eat up the power grid like nothing else. So, those machines are, not great for the environment. And they take up a lot of power and cooling and everything else. So I think that while if you're just a traditional SaaS company, I don't think green ops is ever going to be that important to most traditional SaaS companies, but I think it's going to be hyper important to AI companies, because AI companies are going to have to show stockholders and boards and customers like we are trying our best not to be part of this AI carbon problem that I think will get a lot more press in the coming years than it really has already. Most people just haven't really dug into it too much, but yeah, it's a huge deal. It's very similar to like Bitcoin mining and how people are like, yeah, Bitcoin's great, but like the carbon footprint of these like machines that are running at 99% utilization 24/7, that are hyper beefy machines to process all the Bitcoin blockchain stuff is like crazy. So yeah, I don't know how much of the regulation will be government more than like customer and market driven. But I do think it's something that is for AI companies is going to get a lot of eyeballs. We have some AI companies on our platform now who are already starting to like look into how they could become more sustainable and use, slightly less wasteful machines from a carbon perspective.
Being more aware about the data, about how efficient a certain place is, will hopefully make them be more responsible about their usage.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that I was listening to somebody talk about this actually a few months ago, and it was a really good take on it. But basically what they're saying is FinOps has a passion problem, but not a data problem. So in other words, you have all the data in the world to make cloud optimization decisions. It's all out there. You just have to filter it and play with it and manipulate it and make decisions. The problem is a lot of companies don't have the energy or don't really want to do it manually. So they look at third parties to do it and software providers to do it because it's not sexy or interesting or fun.
Yeah.
Green Ops is the opposite. It has a huge amount of people are passionate about helping to make technology more sustainable, but it doesn't have any data. Like it's the problem. There's no native data reports that the cloud providers publish where people can understand the detailed layering of their carbon footprint and then make decisions based on it. So I do think Green Ops for us is kind of a bet on, once again, helping to make the platform really helpful for the user. And if there's we have a couple customers that really like it. Most of our customers, I don't think, use it very much, but that's totally fine. I was expecting that. But I think that the customers who do use it, who do care about it, being able to give them a platform that's great. Our North is going to do all this really cool stuff. It's going to bring your costs down. All wonderful. So also this Green Ops thing that maybe might help you guys in some of your sustainability goals and all of that, which is great. It's just an added little software piece that's just there in the background if you want it.
Yeah. And on FinOps, where do you see it going in the near future, like 3 to 5 years? AI is also helping so much. So what is going to be the new competitive advantage to companies in this field?
It's a really good question. It's, I think it's going to get more and more complex. So like the first early versions of FinOps is very driven on, I run all this infrastructure in AWS. I need to reduce costs. It's like, great, here's a software to reduce costs. I think the more complex, the more advanced customers that we're working with, we have customers who are like 100 level, 200 level that are just like, my bill is 25 grand a month. I need to get it to 20 or 15 or as close to it as I can because we're trying to raise funding and we're trying to extend a runway. It's a great, cool, awesome. That's kind of 100 level, 200 level thinking. the more advanced customers that we're seeing, which I think will become more normalized throughout the market, is we want to ingest data from many sources, not just AWS or GCP. We want to make optimization decisions in a multi-cloud world. We want to be able to loop in costs from Databricks, Snowflake, OpenAI, Anthropic, all these advanced other, there's cloud infrastructure now. There's these providers for AI and LLMs and all that stuff. It's like all of this is now part of our SaaS costs, not just AWS anymore. We have multiple cloud providers, we have LLM providers, we have third-party software. So being able to have an intelligent solution that can optimize across that full stack, once again, the more complex it gets, the more better fit for AI than it's going to be for humans. So I think that like if you're looking at a curve of like how many people want to do FinOps is kind of going like this, and then like how many companies can do FinOps manually is kind of going like this. So I think like that space of like AI, FinOps, doing really complex stuff in a multi-cloud world is what I see being more and more adopted in the enterprise space in the next 5 or 6 years. But I don't know, who knows? Nobody saw the AI boom coming 2 years before it came. So something could come and change everything for all I know. Maybe there's going to be a new cloud provider that everybody runs to in a few years for all I know. So we'll kind of just see what happens.
Yeah, there's been a shift where multi-cloud is more popular than it used to be. And that makes things a bit more complex when it comes to managing finances in the cloud. That will be, an interesting time that puts you in a great position. Also, I know that you know the importance of, surrounding yourself with the right people. But what was the biggest gap in your knowledge as you're building this company? And how did you always make sure that you had the right people to fill it?
It's a very good question. I would say that the biggest gap that I had was how to fundraise. I had never worked for a super early startup. I'd never been part of a team that was fundraising from venture capitalists or anything. And for me, in order to fill that, I was very fortunate to find a few different mentors and people that I'd met and that had raised a lot and have very successful, later stage startups who were super open to mentoring me and giving me really, really good advice. And so I was very, very lucky that I met the right people at the right time. Like some of startup success is like 70% execution and like 30% like timing and luck, like just like inevitable. I think you can manipulate some of that and, keep building through times where maybe you're not going to be as lucky or maybe the timing is as good. For us, I think a few things kind of came together, which I don't know if I'd say we were lucky on, but I think that we worked really, really hard to be able to maximize our opportunity within certain windows where we could really maximize it. So, I would say that, it's super important. Like self-awareness is really, really important to be, if you're going to be a founder, like you have to really understand, like, even now as we're getting to later stages, like we're not a baby company anymore. We have 20 something employees. We just raised Series A. So like we're still a startup, but we're not like an early stage like project anymore. We're really like a kind of established company. So now like the challenges are different. Like there's gaps I have now that like I need to get better at. Like I'm still learning how to hire people and how to run teams. I'm still learning how to like be a good operational leader from like being an operational leader of a team of 20 is totally different than like me and 2 or 3 people in like a WeWork trying to figure it out. Right. It's like a totally different game. So I think you always have to try and have self-awareness and be kind of ruthlessly mean to yourself a little bit and be like, all right, what do I stink at? What do I need to get better at? Is there something that I'm not bringing to the table that's holding the company back? And like, I need to either hire somebody for it or get better at it. Right.
Yeah. So if you look back, who do you think or what position was the most impactful hire? Where you're like, wow, that filled the gap for me and made a big difference in the company.
Yeah, there's like 2 key hires that we made. Obviously, my co-founder, convincing him to come onto the project was huge. I am very unapologetic of the fact that I can't write code. I could probably figure it out. I just haven't sat down to learn. Like, it's one of those things where like, you shouldn't try and do everything. Like you should like start up as a team. You should really figure out like, who's the best in the world at this thing? Let's plug them into that.
Yeah.
Well, finding a really good co-founder, in the early stages of the company that can come in and build the product and be a technical leader was huge. We finished 2024. We always have these like breaks in our calendar. Like we'll be totally off work between like a couple days before Christmas all the way through like a couple days after New Year's.
Yeah.
It's like a mental health break for everyone, but it's also like a time for me as a founder to like take a step back and like reflect and think. And like one of the things I noticed in 2024 was like towards the end of the year, how much of my time was getting eaten up, not like by things that weren't the things I was really good at. Like I'm really good at product and sales. Like I should be spending all my time on product and sales. And I was spending a lot of time on hiring and marketing and all that. So I like, at the end of 2024, I was like, I think I need a chief of staff. I never even knew what a chief of staff did, up until that point. But I was like, is this kind of why startups like hire chiefs of staff? I'm like, yeah, it's a kind of a generalist that's going to do a bunch of stuff to like help keep the CEO into the part of the business that person is really, really good at.
Yeah.
So I hired somebody to be chief of staff who's a star. And that person was immediately impactful. And a lot of our growth this year has had to do with like how much work that person does.
Wow.
They run our marketing, practice. They do people ops and interviewing. They do a million things. So, that person was really impactful as well.
That's great. So what piece of advice would you give to a professional, tech professional, anyone who has a great idea, but is afraid to take the leap like you did?
It's kind of a tough question. I'm not big on advice because I think everyone has to find their own way. But I think if you want to be an entrepreneur, you should do it. And you should realize it's going to be really, really hard and you're probably going to fail. And I think one of the biggest pieces of advice is learn to only take advice or care about the opinions of people who you admire or more successful than you. Everything I've done in my career, including North, came with a lot of people that I knew or people that are close to me that either didn't think it was a good idea or would say to people, this isn't going to work or whatever. And I learned early on to just kind of tune things out and not really think about it. So I don't necessarily care what people's opinions are one way or the other. I do care about what our customers' opinions are, what, my co-founder's opinion is. I care about, if there's mentors in my space that I would deeply care what their opinion is on our brand and our product and all that. Do I care what somebody I used to work with like says about North? Or no, I don't. Like, it's cool. They can have their own opinion. So I think like if you're going to be a founder, you got to have a thick skin and you got to just learn who to tune out and who to listen to or at least evaluate their opinion. But I think you got to learn to tune a lot of people out.
I like that. Something I've been thinking about a lot lately, developing a strong inner moral compass.
Yeah.
It's easy to ask a lot of people for advice, makes you confused a bit too. But to discern which advice to take and then also to make a decision from within yourself is not always the easiest thing to do, but I think it's a good thing.
I agree.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for sharing your journey and coming on the podcast. And thanks so much for sharing about North Cloud. So tell me, where can our listeners follow you and your company?
We're on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. That's where I'm the most active. That's where I post the most memes and everything else. You can also find us on, I don't know if we have a company page on X. I have a personal page on X. I barely use it, but if you want to tweet at me on X, I'll eventually see it.
Yeah, and I'll link the LinkedIn, the website, decks, everything in the podcast description. So, and some blogs and other things that you've done as well that people can find.
Thanks, Alexa.
Thank you so much for listening to Alexa's Input AI. And if you want to follow along with my new episodes, writing, content, everything I'm building, you can find me at alexagriffith.com, on Substack, on YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you enjoyed this conversation, it would mean a lot if you subscribed, shared this episode with a friend, left a quick rating or a comment to help more people to discover the show and keep these conversations going. Again, I'm really grateful you're here. This podcast started as a side project for me a few years ago, and every listener who reaches out or keeps coming back reminds me exactly why I love doing this and I love putting so much time into it. I hope this episode gave you something to think about, something to talk about. So always stay curious, stay grounded, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you for your support.